Welcome back to Switchpoint, and today we've got a pretty fun episode. Last week we tackled Nintendo's internal studios, and this week I think we're going to look to the third party and how that support's going to play out.
Yes, definitely, because, there's a lot of new companies that have said that they will be hoping to support Nintendo in the coming months and years. And of course, that there are, the usual suspects that have been supporting them since the Wii U era.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the key takeaway for people unfamiliar with kind of the third party scene on Switch, it's like Wii U was such a colossal failure for Nintendo and the developers that supported it that barely any games sold. And as a result, I mean, we saw hardly any third party support on Nintendo Switch for the first year or so. And then when it really took off, all these companies were scrambling to port their games to Switch. And, now, yeah, a lot of games come to Switch, but even then, I mean, I feel like almost every big third party title, for the most part, skips out solely because of the lack of hardware. But with that changing on Switch 2, I think obviously we're going to see a ton of ports and just current gen games come over to the system. And yeah, you mentioned one that already pledged their support. I mean, my mind's right there on EA. I mean, EA just recently said, they want to bring titles like Madden and et cetera, all the sports games to new consoles, hinting at the Nintendo Switch. And we had Madden on Wii U, but Madden never made its way to Nintendo Switch. So I think this will be a fun jump. And I mean, hey, it sells like hotcakes every year. I haven't bought a Madden since Madden 17. But yeah, man, I mean, I think it'll sell well. And I hope that's a first step forward for EA.
Yes, I definitely agree because there are a lot of EA games that could potentially make the jump to Nintendo Switch, specifically the Switch 2. I mean, obviously as you mentioned, there's the sports games, there's Madden, there's EA Sports FC, and a few others, of course. But to me, the immediate question becomes how would EA potentially consider bringing some of their, bigger single player games perhaps, like maybe we'll get the Star Wars Jedi games, maybe even if they want to play it safer, obviously there's Mass Effect, the Mass Effect trilogy, there is the Dragon Age games that they could bring over. I mean, in the past, we already had obviously the Knights of the Old Republic games come to Switch. So it is possible that we could get a few more Star Wars games from them, especially because they're so successful. And there are already a lot of Star Wars games on the Nintendo Switch, especially.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that I'm thinking on is, those games that EA has released in the last 5 years or so. And the big ones for me, as you said, it's got to be the Star Wars Jedi series from Respawn. I think that's easy money. There's a third one in development. They're going to want to put that on Switch. So I think that likely we'll see a double pack or, both games launch on Nintendo Switch 2 pretty early on. I also think Dead Space will probably come to Switch. And when I say Switch, I mean Switch 2. But yeah, I mean, EA's got a lot of stuff. Sims 4. I mean, they just launched the anniversary collection with 1 and 2 on PC. And I don't think Sims 4 is on Switch.
I don't think so either. I think the only quote unquote Sims games that are on Switch are the My Sims games.
Yeah, and they just recently came out. So yeah, I don't know. I think that EA has a lot to look forward to there. Hold on. I'm gonna cut that. Yeah, so and those just recently came out in November. So I don't know. I think EA has a huge backlog to pull from, and it'll be really interesting to see where they kind of go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the key question when it comes to third party support, especially on a console like the Nintendo Switch, is expanding their audience. They tried to do a little bit of that with the Wii U, where they had really random games like Devil's Third, and of course we'll talk about like Ubisoft later with Zombie U, and they played it a little bit more safe with the Switch. So the question going into the Switch 2 is now that they're very confident in the audience that buys their consoles, will they go back to that sort of style and bring those more mature games like Dead Space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. Nintendo's established a base of, just recently 150 million Nintendo Switch. Now, granted, yes, people own multiple. I'm sure someone in the comments, well, there's not actually 150 million users. Well, there are over 100 million Nintendo accounts, well over, and there's 150 million units that have been sold. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, yeah, there's a hundred. Let's just put it that way. There's 150 million Switches out there. That's a lot of people playing games, and I think the big thing that Nintendo's gonna have to do is how can we take this audience, transition them to Switch 2, which is with your first party games, and then how can we grow Switch 2 beyond what Switch was? And I think you hit it right on the money. It's finding new audiences. Nintendo definitely has their fair share of like mature games on the system. Like we've gotten quite a few of the Resident Evil titles on Switch. We got just Famicom Detective Club recently. Great game. Definitely had some horror elements. But I totally agree. There's a lack of like true M-rated games on Switch. I'm kind of bouncing off here, but I mean, one of the ones I'm thinking that I think would be really awesome is Sega and having the entire Yakuza series come over. I mean, we just got Yakuza Kiwami, but those games are definitely serious, and I think really they would fit right at home with what Nintendo offers with Switch.
Yes, Sega's a no-brainer in my opinion. I think, in the past they have supported Nintendo, but they've only really used their safest games, so to speak. Like with the Wii U, we got, Sonic Lost World, and I'm pretty sure there was a Yakuza game released for the Wii U. Was it Kiwami or was it something else? I don't remember.
I want to say it was 1 and 2. They had like a 1 and 2 combo pack.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, absolutely. I do think that, it's only a matter of time before the entire Yakuza series, including 7 and 8, get ported to the Switch 2. And I think, they could even go further, bring over the Judgment games, for instance. And I think another big part of Sega that we already know is successful for them is, of course, Atlas. We already got Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal. So, next, I mean, Persona 3 Reload would be great, and obviously, even Metaphor Fantasio would be awesome for Switch.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to cancel the Persona series, but
Yeah, we don't
more
need it
more
anymore.
so more so, I think Metaphor is probably going to be a launch title. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think that that's just a big game that people want to play portably. Persona 3 Reload, I would expect to also make the jump pretty early on. And I mean, even outside of that, like Atlas definitely has titles that are going to be coming up that are, pulled from the backlog that they could really put over to Switch. I mean, they've been one of the biggest supporters for Switch from the beginning. We had Shin Megami Tensei 5 launch exclusively for the platform, and it stayed that way until last year with Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. So I think really it's going to be a question of, what does Atlas have planned for this year, next year? Is that Persona 6? And if it is, it's definitely coming day one on Nintendo Switch.
Yes, especially since they've talked about in the past how, they want to make it a norm where their games will release worldwide all on the same day. Because Persona 5 Royal released in Japan on, I think, Halloween 2019, and it came to the United States on March 31st, 2020. So clearly they want to have, instead of the old days where they only really stuck to PlayStation, they clearly want to have all of their games on one specific, multiple consoles on the same day available worldwide.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a focus. I mean, Sega's really transitioned through this generation, moving towards, worldwide releases, same date, all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, Persona 5 Royal was a crazy one because that game came out just about, I think it was 11 days after. That was a crazy time because the
Mm-hmm.
20th of March, we got Animal Crossing and Doom. The 31st, we got Persona 5 Royal, and then we had Final Fantasy 7 Remake on April 10th. I mean, that was a crazy, like, 20, 30-day stretch.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I still remember that time very fondly. This huge, almost golden age of video games. But speaking of Square Enix, I think they're also a big studio that will see support Nintendo, especially with the Nintendo Switch too, in the future. I mean, obviously the Final Fantasy series. I mean, we've mentioned it, I think, on the first episode we did of this podcast that Remake and Rebirth would be incredible on the Nintendo Switch too.
Yeah, I mean, and to be truthful, I mean, maybe this is something that not everyone's going to agree with, but I would argue that Square Enix has been the biggest supporter of Nintendo Switch. We saw the Octopath Traveler series, we saw Bravely Default 2, countless other titles, all the Saga games, just everything come over. They've done an incredible job supporting Switch, and I think that this is going to be the console that the AAA stuff makes the move. Yeah, so your remake, your rebirth, I mean, I think those are going to be the ones that come first. I would expect Final Fantasy 16 to come to Switch, but I don't think it'll happen soon, solely because I think the focus should be on 7 Remake and 7 Rebirth. Naturally, because they're better games, but that's a discussion for another time. But also, they're bigger games. And I think that if you're going to try to get the Nintendo audience hooked on a Final Fantasy game, the 7 Remake and 7 Rebirth are the games to do so, especially with Part 3 coming out in likely 2027. Because building that hype for Nintendo fans, getting them invested is going to make that Part 3 release just unbelievably blow past everything Remake and Rebirth did on PlayStation 4 and 5.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, those are huge titles, and having them on the go would be a huge boon for the Switch. I mean, something I've noticed is that RPGs are especially popular on Switch. I don't know what it is about being able to play them, anywhere or everywhere you go, but those titles thrive on that console. So yeah, absolutely, bringing in Remake and Rebirth to those to that system is a no-brainer, and I think they will continue to support it. I mean, there's been rumors of a Chrono Trigger remake for a while, and with the release of Super Mario RPG, which was a huge collaboration between Square and Nintendo, I think that's the next step, because Chrono Trigger is arguably the most seminal title of Square and Nintendo's work together during the 90s.
I don't know what rumor you're talking about with Chrono Trigger Remake, but that's news to me. That's one of the greatest games of all time. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think what we should be talking about in terms of rumors is Final Fantasy 9 Remake, which I expect to launch this year, and that's definitely coming to Switch too. It's a huge game. And I mean, look, Chrono Trigger Remake would be phenomenal. That's like too much. That's too much. Yoshinori Kitase's a busy guy. He needs to remake Final Fantasy 8 next before he can do Chrono Trigger. I'm sorry, but I don't know. I think beyond those games, it's like Square has a lot coming up. I think the Kingdom Hearts series needs actual ports. The cloud ports were an absolute joke and an embarrassment to the series. And Kingdom Hearts 4 is probably coming out next year. And I'm sorry, like, we need a way to play it. And, talking on your comment about, what it is about Switch that brings RPG players to it, I mean, I think you hit it right on the nail on the head. It's absolutely the fact that you can play those games portably. I think with PlayStation 5, for example, right? Yeah, I buy most of my third-party big RPGs on PS5 solely because I know that the technical experience is going to be adequate and on par with what I'd expect. But really, like, I don't prefer to play it on that solely because if I want to play that game, I have to be locked down on my couch, right? I can't go and, okay, I'm going to go to wherever and go on a trip. I really can't bring it. I mean, I bought a PlayStation Portal for like 5 days, tried it out, and returned it because it was so bad. And the lag is terrible. Remote plays, it's trash. It's trash, man. Like, I gotta be real, it's trash. I mean, I'm sorry. And I mean, look, Nintendo has it down. I can bring my console, play it on my couch, and I'm like, all right, I'm leaving. I take it with me. And I mean, I think the ability to bring games like so big that are Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, like of that caliber, Kingdom Hearts 3, having that ability to just say, all right, I'm taking this with me in the car and I'm gonna play it at, 1080p 60 FPS. That's unbelievable. I mean, that is in and itself worthy of a purchase, in my opinion, and I am legitimately terrified of the ports that are coming because I'm going to be spending so much money. Like, it's so bad.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I have the exact same problem with my Steam Deck. I traveled, I think I mentioned it before, but I traveled to the UK recently, and the Switch and the Steam Deck were lifesavers for me. And I, the genre I mostly played on those was RPGs. Steam Deck is great. There are so many games that are available on it. However, the compromise is that the battery life, right? Even though I wanted to play it more, I had to pretty much just treat it like a normal console where I could only play it while it was charged, connected to a charger cable. Whereas the Switch usually has a more approachable battery life, and with the Switch 2 gonna likely have an even better battery life, I think that genre will really stand out. I mean, as you said, yeah, I mean, remake and rebirth on the go while you travel on an airplane or even just making a commute is sounds heavenly to me. So yeah, I think Square Enix will likely continue to support Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch in the next few years and so on. So, what's another studio you would really want to see support the Nintendo Switch, or you think will support the Nintendo Switch?
I mean, just going off of what we got with Switch, I mean, Koei Tecmo is going to be a huge supporter of Switch 2. They've been right up there with Square Enix being one of the biggest supporters on Switch. And, I'd like to see Dynasty Warriors Origins make the jump. I have not had the opportunity to check that one out yet, but I've heard phenomenal things. And I think that would be a really fun game to make the jump. I hope that Omega Force goes back and unlocks the frame rate cap on Age of Calamity because that game does not run well on the current Switch. But beyond that, Atelier has got a new entry coming up. That's coming on Switch though, and really, I just want to see games like I think Ninja Gaiden 4, although that's published by Xbox. I think seeing those big games, Sigma 2, and all that come to Switch would be really really cool. So I'm interested to see what Koei Tecmo has to offer. I think that they are seriously ramping up as one of the most recognized Japanese publishers right now. And it's really exciting for them because they have such a diverse portfolio and a lot of great games.
Yes, and like other companies, a few others here and there, they also make games often exclusively for the Nintendo Switch. I mean, you mentioned Age of Calamity, but there's obviously its predecessor, Hyrule Warriors. There's Fire Emblem Warriors, and its successor, Fire Emblem Three Hopes. So I wonder if we'll get more Muso games from them. I don't know if that means necessarily a new Hyrule Warriors or a new Fire Emblem Warriors or perhaps, a new franchise entirely. Like the joke I've heard for years is, "Oh, I can't wait for Mario Warriors," but I would like to see maybe something involving the Metroid series. It would be a very different style for them, but I think it could be very fun and there's clearly the world for it. So I would love to see how they take their pre-existing formula and push it essentially to its limits, especially with the Switch 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty safe bet to expect a new Warriors game from Omega Force. I think, Metroid would be really interesting. I'd be really curious to see how they do that. I think, the one everyone's always clamoring for years has been Xenoblade, and I think it would be a lot of fun, but also, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think that would be fun. And even then, I mean, another Hyrule Warriors I wouldn't be complaining about. I love Definitive Edition. I refuse to play Age of Calamity because it runs so poorly. So I'm at least looking forward to playing that on Switch too.
Yes, I think, yeah, absolutely. A Xenoblade Chronicles Warriors would be great. I think the whole, you know, there's going to be an inevitable discussion about canon, and because you'd probably expect characters from Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, and X to make an appearance, maybe in a Hyrule Warriors like setting where they all cross over, which would probably be a mess, but I think could be a dream come true for a lot of players. So we'll see. But yeah, I think that there is definitely a lot of potential for different Warriors games and just in general the Koei Tecmo to bring some really interesting titles to the Switch 2 and beyond. For me, I think a big studio I want to see support the Switch 2 is, we mentioned it before, I think at the very first episode, was Xbox. Recently they said that they want to support the Switch 2 in the coming months. But recently they announced that they're bringing Forza Horizon 5 to PlayStation, which is huge. Now, do I think that means that we're going to see Forza Horizon on the Nintendo Switch? Who knows, honestly. But I think it's possible that Halo is a no brainer. They already brought Cuphead. I think we'll see other of their unique games. I'd love to see stuff from Bethesda, maybe Dishonored and Deathloop and the Fallout series. I think that there's a lot of potential places they could go with that.
Yeah, to comment on Forza Horizon 5, I'd bet $1,000 that game's coming to Switch too. It might even be a launch title. The reasoning behind that would be that Panic Button is developing it, and they developed the Doom port and the Doom Eternal port for Switch. They're super experienced with Switch hardware. I would legitimately be stunned if Forza Horizon 5 isn't also coming to Switch too. And on Doom, I think the Dark Ages is definitely coming to Switch. I wouldn't be surprised if that's also a launch title, just because of the timing. But yeah, I mean, I think both those games are going to come. I think you're going to see a lot of support from Xbox. Ninja Gaiden 4 will probably jump to Switch. Beyond that, I mean, they've got a lot of stuff planned right now. Fable, I wouldn't be surprised to come over. I mean, you have to expect at this point every Xbox game is going to come over, and you have to treat them like a publisher. So really, everything that they've got offering, I think that you're going to see Fable and the Gears of War games, the rumored collection, E-Day, I think it's called. All those games, I think, are going to come over. I wouldn't even be surprised to see like something like South of Midnight get announced pretty soon, relatively. But yeah, I mean, I think Xbox has a really great, diverse lineup of games that are probably going to all be coming to Switch too. I mean, they're losing money by not making the jump to the platform.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, kind of, it seems like the main subject or theme of this episode is infinite potential and Nintendo expanding their audience. I think you know, the multiplayer games have always had a place on Nintendo, especially with the Switch. Obviously there's Splatoon and Smash and the countless fighting games we've gotten, and Fortnite and other things like that. So having Halo, especially the Master Chief Collection with working multiplayer on the Switch would be incredible. I mean, it's on Steam Deck. It doesn't really work that well, but I think it'd be so much fun to have online multiplayer, player versus player, and even the cooperative campaign to be brought over. And there are so many games I could see myself replaying, especially from that collection. Like, I really want to play Halo 2 Anniversary again on the Switch. I think that'd be so much fun. And yeah, I think as you mentioned, Gears of War, South of Midnight, probably their Bethesda titles, their art titles from Arcane, probably more Activision titles. I would not be remotely surprised if we start getting Call of Duty games on the Switch. At the very least, Warzone seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just comment, Nintendo did sign a 10-year binding contract with Xbox and Activision that there would be Call of Duty on Switch. So I think that's a good bet. I think likely you're going to see the new COD for this year launch day one on Switch too. But yeah, I mean, Halo's a great shout. I love Halo so much. I think Infinite and the MCC jumping over would be so fun. And really, I'd just be excited to see, like, playing Forge games and stuff on Switch 2 just would be so fun. I adore the campaigns of Halo. Halo 3 is one of my favorite games, and I'm really hopeful that that actually happens because it's been talked about since 2019. And I think just the fact that we could potentially have Halo just running on a Nintendo system, A, and B, have Halo running on a portable console is just crazy, man.
Yes, and especially with the split screen features with the original, I was gonna say four Halo games, but it's not really four Halo games. There's Halo 1, 2, 3, 4, Halo 3 ODST, and Halo Reach, and of course Halo Infinite. We don't need to talk about Halo 5, but needless to
Uh,
say,
dude, I'd be down with Halo 5 on Switch for the multiplayer. I would.
yes, I can definitely see that. And yeah, the multiplayer is the best part, even if I'm still mad that we never got a proper split screen mode for Halo 5. But with the mechanics, it kind of would have been tricky to do. So yeah, I think Halo is a big one, and I have a strong suspicion that we'll get Halo for the Nintendo Switch, if not this year, then next year for sure.
Yeah, here's a question for you though. Do you think that Halo's going to come to Switch overall or just Switch 2?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would it really could go either way, but I would not be surprised if they make it a Switch 2 exclusive. It's not exactly the most technically intensive game compared to a lot of others that could come to the Switch 2. However, I think having it on Switch 2 would be just make sense, especially with the increased hardware, likely the better cartridges that they're going to be making, and other little elements like that. I think Xbox is likely having that in mind when they're considering bringing games over to the Switch, is the technical differences between the original Switch and the Switch 2. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if this game launches on Switch solely because I think it could run. I don't think it would have an issue running. There would just be too many changes and compromises that would need to be made rather than just porting the game to Switch 2. And, you can rely on DLSS to make up the difference. And I think that's what Microsoft's going to do. I mean, I would be really surprised to see these games come to Switch 1. And I mean, you got to think about it too. Like with all these third party games, I mean, that's a huge incentive for people to buy a new console. I mean, sorry, it is. The fact that you can go and say, hey, Halo players, go play Halo Master Chief Collection on Nintendo Switch 2. I mean, that's a huge sell for people that really love Halo. It is.
Yes, for sure. And I wonder, I doubt we'll see other companies, especially bigger console companies like PlayStation. I doubt we're going to see Spider Man, for example, on the Switch 2. I would love it. But considering how stubborn PlayStation is when it comes to porting their games to anything other than PC, it feels like a far fetched dream. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, third party games really help sell consoles. And I almost wonder if they might try and you know, we're likely going to see a lot of upgrades to the Nintendo Switch Online service, especially if we see bigger, higher profile multiplayer games make the jump. Like, I was doing some research into the original Switch hype cycle, especially in 2018, after it had already been released, and of course, the lead up to Smash Brothers. And I almost forgot about how the voice chat is entirely limited to the mobile app. So I almost
Yeah.
wonder how they'll probably have to improve that, especially if, we're going to get games like Halo and Call of Duty, because no one in their right mind is going to install the Nintendo Switch mobile app. Sorry to any hardcore Nintendo Switch mobile app fans out there, but I downloaded it once in when it first released in 2018, and I have never used it since.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you're being so hostile towards the app. I mean, I think it's so good. Like, I'd much rather just open my smartphone, have another pair of headphones, one headphones like earbuds for voice chat and then headphones on top for game volume. Like, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really in depth, and I think it's even more in depth how you can't even purchase games from the phone. Like PlayStation, you have the store on the phone, and same with Xbox. but you can't make any remote purchases. I think that is so novel of Nintendo. So, yeah, needless to say, I really hope they change that.
I don't know. I think it's something that they might look at, but I also it's like you just have to think about what's on the priority list for Nintendo. Like, is it gonna be the UI? Is it gonna be communication features? And it's like, I don't know. I hope it is. I think it would be great. I think that they would seriously, I mean, revolutionize what they have right now, right? I mean, it takes like 10 years, it feels like, to find whatever your friends. And like, even then, like, what's the point of adding friends on Nintendo Switch? You can't even really do anything. You know what I mean? It's like on PlayStation, I have my whole profile customized. I've got my biggest thing, if we're talking about things that Nintendo needs to add, achievements. Like, I need achievements on the system. It's unbelievable that needs to be said, but achievements need to be made. So I hope that happens. But yeah, it's just crazy. It's like, what's even the point of adding friends and doing this? It's like the Switch is such an independent console. Like, no themes, unique features, no nothing. Like, just play your games. If it's multiplayer, invite your friends. But if you want to do anything social, got to use the mobile app.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I never use the mobile app. Like I said, I pretty much exclusively when I'm playing a game like Mario Party, I only really use Discord. And I notice, I mean, what else would you really use? But yeah, I definitely agree that achievements are a no-brainer. Obviously, with Nintendo's pre-existing games, but especially with the third-party games, playing a Halo game without achievements just feels wrong. Like that just feels it feels like you're playing a game naked. Like how else are they gonna make the lasso, which for those who don't know is legendary All Skulls on, where basically playing Halo on the hardest difficulty with no HUD in like a bunch of people throwing constant grenades at you, limited ammo, and all of these further limitations. And it is so difficult. I tried it once and it is a nightmare. So I can't even imagine like what would be the incentive of that if there's no achievements.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard sell, right? I mean, I think that ultimately, Nintendo's never like needed them. But I mean, I think about all the games that I've 100%ed or just, played the crap out of on Switch, like the Xenoblade games especially. I have like 750 hours in two. I have 403, and I have like 300 or 250 in Xenoblade DE. And I've done everything in those games. And there's just, okay, great, I did it. But like, there's no reward or anything. It's weird, right? And I don't know, like, I would definitely consider myself somewhat of an achievement hunter, a trophy hunter, or whatever, because I have like 77 platinums on PlayStation. And, I enjoy doing that. But part of the reason that I, want to go finish a game is like, if I really enjoy it, I'm going to go do the 100%. But having that trophy list definitely motivates me too. So I hope they look at that because I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, especially with popular games like Odyssey, which has its own kind of built-in achievement system, but having a place where you can kind of show off to your friends, because really, I mean, that's part of the fun of achievements is being able to brag to your friends and family and say, I did this and you didn't. Having that on the Switch too, especially with, the eminent 3D Mario and the countless other third party games that will eventually make the jump to the Nintendo Switch 2 just feels like a no brainer. But kind of getting back to third party, I think another studio that we've sort of alluded to that will likely continue to support the Nintendo Switch 2. I mean, they've already stated as much is Ubisoft. It was either last year, the year before last year, after the release of Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, where they said that they will be re-releasing the game, which sounds weird now with backwards compatibility, but they will have new enhancements for the game on whatever the successor to the Nintendo Switch is. So we already know that they are going to be planning to support the system. Question is, what else might we see from them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Ubisoft's in an interesting place right now. Kind of the future of the company is all riding on Assassin's Creed Shadows in a way. As crazy as that sounds, financially, they might be looking to sell if this game does not do as well as they hope. And I don't know. I think that it's going to sell really well just from the metrics I've seen online. But I think that's a game that will be there day one on Switch, or close to it. They're gonna bring. I bet Mirage will come over. I bet Shadows will be there. I bet we'll get Star Wars Outlaws. Just all these games. I mean, you have to think about it. Like from really 2017 onwards, like all these big AAA games that have just missed the system for one reason or another are all kind of fair game for all these companies. So I think that those are big ones that will come over. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned, Mario Rabbids. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, a third one that ends up happening or a new collaboration. But it'll kind of just depend on how Ubisoft views Nintendo as a platform and how much of importance it is.
Yes, for sure. And building on that conversation of how important they view Nintendo is as, as you said, as a partner and as a console, I think another, if the Switch 2 does really well, I would not be surprised if we get Rainbow Six Siege, for instance, because that is a huge multiplayer game for Ubisoft, arguably I think their most profitable game to date. And, I wouldn't bring back the Watch Dogs games, which originally made its home on the Switch and the Wii U. Maybe, this was a something I had heard about around the time when Prince of Persia Lost Crown came out, was that team may be working on a Rayman remake, which would be very nice, especially with the release of the Rayman DLC for Sparks of Hope. So I think we're really gonna have to see, how Ubisoft does in the next few months and how they see Nintendo, because assuming they don't have to sell because of Assassin's Creed Shadows, maybe we'll get perhaps Star Wars Outlaws, and other similar games like that. They're more substandard AAA games, like maybe The Division. I doubt we'll see quadruple A games like Skull and Bones, but hey, you never know.
I actually wouldn't be surprised if they port that one over solely because it sold so poorly that they probably want to make up those sales.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the logic a lot of people have, especially companies when it comes to Nintendo, is I would not buy this game on PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X or S, but I might buy it on Nintendo Switch just because of that portable factor. Speaking of which, kind of briefly going back to Xbox for a bit, did Sea of Thieves ever make the jump to Nintendo Switch, or is that only
It didn't,
PlayStation?
but it
Okay.
definitely will. That's a game that makes a lot of sense for Xbox. Yeah, I would be kind of surprised if it doesn't jump quick, like pretty quickly. So, it's been really successful on PlayStation 5. It was super successful on PC. So I think that's one you'll see jump pretty quickly. And it gives Rare a chance to work with Nintendo again, which is always good.
Yes, and on the subject of Rare, I'd like to see, it wouldn't really be needed per se because of how many games that they have made are already on the Nintendo Switch online service, but I would like to see kind of the Rare Replay make a return.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an option for sure. It's something that I think you'll have to look at. I mean, yeah, you just said, Switch Online, that's something that they've put most of the games in that collection on Switch Online. So it's going to boil down to, are we going to just port the rest of them to Switch Online or do we want to release this collection? But I mean, yeah, I just hope that we see Rare work on some other stuff beyond, Everwild, which who knows when that's coming out.
Yeah, they've been kind of trapped in the Sea of Thieves and survival game sort of trench for a long time. So I hope they get a chance to maybe go back to their roots. I doubt we'll see anything. It's sad that I doubt this will happen, but I really would like to see a new Banjo Kazooie in the wake of this sort of resurrection of 3D platformers. I mean, Astrobot did so well last year, and that is about as traditional of a 3D platformer as you can get with jigsaw pieces and everything. So Banjo Kazooie would be perfect, especially for the Switch 2. But like I said, I highly doubt that'll happen.
Yeah, I don't really think it'll happen either. I do think if it does happen, though, it won't be rare. I think it'll be one of Microsoft's other studios or the Toys for Bob studio might take it on. I know they're working with Xbox, but I don't know. I think that they're more likely to touch Crash and Spyro, if anything. I do want to say, we talked about Rainbow Six. I think that makes a lot of sense for Switch, especially with kind of the mouse Joy-Con feature. But I will say, I have an inkling feeling that we might see a new Rainbow Six or like a new, Tom Clancy game this year. And if we do, I think that's going to launch on Switch 2 day one because Ubisoft really, again, you can't dismiss the Nintendo platform anymore. None of these platform holders can. And so at this point, I think the solution is going to be, I mean, you're seeing it with Xbox right now. PlayStation will follow. I mean, I don't know if that's a controversial opinion, but PlayStation's going to follow. It'll start out as PC day one with everything, and it'll evolve past that in the future. But you're going to see all these games come to all platforms solely because the cost of AAA development has ballooned so much that they need as much profit as possible. And the only way to do that without losing money is to launch on all systems. And I mean, you saw it with Square Enix with Rebirth, right? Rebirth probably would have sold like 7 or 8 million copies in the first little bit if it would have been on all systems. But instead, it was just on PS5. And while the game sold well, it did not sell what it could have.
Yes, for sure. And I think you're definitely onto something when it comes to this new support. I think, a new Rainbow Six this year would make a lot of sense, whether that or a new Tom Clancy game. Personally, I would love to see a new Splinter Cell, but that's a far flung hope. And, especially because of how poorly, what was it, Rainbow Six Outbreak, I
Yeah, the
think?
extraction one.
Yeah, the kind of zombie-esque shooter that's more cooperative didn't really do that well. I don't even think it's getting any updates anymore. So, yeah, I feel like that's a no-brainer and definitely Xbox, and who knows, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if PlayStation supports the Switch in the coming years. And, Astrobot, we've already mentioned, would be a no-brainer on the Switch too. And God, Spider Man and God of War. We don't need Horizon on the Switch too, but if for the few Horizon fans that are out there, maybe they'll get a kick out of it. But
You mean
especially
the
with
34 million or however many there are, supposedly?
supposedly, yes. To I as someone who enjoyed the first Horizon game, that series just feels like such an industry plant. I'm sorry. Like, it just, what are we doing here anymore? So, hopefully, with PlayStation's new leadership, we'll get some, different kind of games. Like, I mean, a no brainer for me is, Little Big Planet or Dreams. I think Sackboy: A Big Adventure would be amazing on the Switch too, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Sony's a weird company. I don't. I think Sackboy's Big Adventure would be great on Switch too, but I also think games like I mean, the true like irony kicker would 100% be putting Astrobot on Switch too. But I just that seems a little too bit of a conflict of interest. I think.
Yeah, true enough. And I mean, same with like PlayStation's been kind of re-releasing their older games. You can buy, I'm pretty sure the original 3, or is it just the original Sly Cooper on
You
the
can buy all
PlayStation
three.
Store?
Yeah.
You can buy all 3, perfect. Yeah. So, it'd be great to see those, but again, it's just a question of how how willing PlayStation is to step into the role of publisher, but they might have to. They may really need to reevaluate their purpose and goals, especially after their, frankly, mostly awful year last year. Sure, they got Astrobot, but they had to cancel so many games as a service because of Concord. So
Yeah.
we'll
I
see.
I don't think they're going to get to choose if they want to put these games on other platforms. I think they're not going to have a choice in the matter. I think it's going to simply boil, when you spend $315 million dollars to make a game like Spider-Man 2, I mean, that was enough for me in 2023. I don't know how. I mean, and I'll tell you how, because of dev salaries and how many, right? How many developers it required. It's like, I think $120,000 for, 180 devs or something, some number like that. And that's, your 315 million across a couple years. And I get it, but at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, every time I think about that game, it blows my mind that it took $315 million to make that game that was 15 hours long. And it simply boils down to the fact that AAA development at Sony is inefficient. And I think that, again, they're not going to have a choice in the matter. The revenue has to meet. And at the end of the day, if it's not selling, their 10 million copy golden number on PlayStation 5, they're going to port it elsewhere. They're going to have to. They're not going to have a choice. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that space, really, because I think Sony is, despite them looking like really solid right now, I do think that they're in a bit of a crisis. They've canceled so many games beyond this year. I mean, we have, right, Wolverine. We've got Wolverine. Uh, Wolverine. We got Death Stranding, which is Kojima, and Ghost of Yotei, and that's it. And beyond that, all those canceled games, who knows what's going to happen in the future and what they're going to have available. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's insane to say that we might see a PlayStation game come to Nintendo Switch too. I mean, we already saw one, Lego Horizon. It came to Switch already. So, yeah, I mean, I think that realistically, that's not that crazy, and I think it might happen. And I think really the other big, publisher that we haven't talked about yet that I think will be right out of the gate with publisher support is Capcom. And I think that's going to be Street Fighter 6. That's going to be Resident Evil 4. That's going to be, all these big games that they've put out. I mean, they're going to be there on Switch. They're going to have to be.
Yeah, I think you're definitely on the money with Resident Evil 4 and Street Fighter 6. But I think a huge game that they will really have to consider bringing to the Nintendo Switch too is Monster Hunter Wilds. Because the Monster Hunter series has notoriously done really well on Nintendo consoles. And I think having Wilds come to the Switch too just makes sense. And maybe even the Devil May Cry games would be awesome.
Yeah, I would love to see DMC 4 and 5 make the jump over. And yeah, I think Monster Hunter Wilds is another game that I kind of expect to be there around launch, right? Monster Hunter Rise was exclusive to Switch for over a year, and it did really well on the platform. So I think Capcom's going to try to capitalize on that audience. And, by the time a couple months have passed, you can launch Monster Hunter Wilds at a discount for Switch players and get them ready for that expansion that'll be coming out in 2026. I mean, that's a really easy, straightforward path. And, that's a game I think so many people are going to be willing to support.
Yeah, especially with how, they've been pretty much exclusively announcing and marketing their recent fighting collection games for the Nintendo Switch. I feel like especially the fighting game market will find such a home on the Switch 2 with Street Fighter 6 and kind of jumping a bit that's related, especially with the recent characters added to Street Fighter 6. I feel like SNK might give us Fatal Fury City of the Wolves on the Switch, or is that already coming?
No, that's not confirmed yet, but I think that's a really good bet. I think, SNK has done a really good job supporting Switch for the most part. And I mean, I think that's a move that makes sense. It's their real big return, first new Fatal Fury in decades. And I think that, yeah, I mean, I would love it. I'm going to support as many fighting games on Switch as I can. I mean, you talk fighting games, we've got Street Fighter 6, City of the Wolves, Tekken 8. I mean, I expect all of those to be on Switch like within the first year. I think it makes so much sense for all the publishers involved solely because, there's going to be DLC for these games for years to come. That's going to keep people engaged. And really, it's like, why would you not port it to Switch? I mean, just don't play it with Joy-Con. You'll be fine.
Yeah, pretty much. I can't imagine playing a fighting game like Street Fighter 6 on Joy-Con unless you're playing on modern or the dynamic mode. Um, but yeah, I think those are definitely no-brainers, and hey, they'll likely run way better than Mortal Kombat 1 did on the Switch.
Yeah, but I will give them credit because those ports for Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 11 are really good. They're really impressive for Switch. I do think we'll see that updated to bring it up to Switch 2 hardware specs, but Yeah, I mean, I think they'll run really well. I would expect 60 FPS on all of them, and yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to have these big games that people look forward to on all platforms available on Switch, which we really couldn't say before Switch 2. So,
Yes, absolutely. And I think on that subject, my kind of big question, or one game from a third party developer that you would love to see support the Nintendo Switch and specifically the Switch 2.
Grand Theft Auto 6.
Oh, that's a good one, actually. On that subject, I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2 on the Switch 2 would be nice.
Yeah, I'm really curious what Rockstar does. I mean, we did get Red Dead Redemption on Switch. So, didn't we? I'm not making that
We
up.
did, we did,
Okay,
we
I was
did,
gonna say
yeah.
I'm not making that up. So, we did get Red Dead Redemption. I'm pretty sure that sold well. So, Red Dead Redemption 2 wouldn't be too hard of a port, I don't think, and I think that that would be something that got people excited. And that's even something that we might see them drop, towards the latter half of this year solely because there's no way that GTA 6 is coming out on Switch day one, and keeping Rockstar focus is going to be key. So I think Red Dead would be really cool. But yeah, I mean, GTA 6, I feel like, that's the big game. It's going to be one of the best selling games of all time. Grand Theft Auto 5 already is. It's over 210 million copies sold. Like, I think you have to port that game to Switch 2. It can run. If it can run on Series S, it can run on Switch 2. So it needs to be ported, it needs to be brought over and blow people's minds. I mean, I don't know. That's my far out thing though, because I have no idea. Like, if that game comes to Switch 2, I would not expect it for like the first year after it launches. Like, it's going to be a down the road thing.
Yeah, for sure. And, other Rockstar games potentially making the jump to Switch 2 would be great. I don't expect us to see GTA 4 or GTA 5 because they usually don't port those games, except for the original trilogy. So I doubt that'll happen, but I would like to see Bully, for instance. I'm pretty sure that has like a remastered version on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So, it coming to the Switch would not be the most far out thing in the world.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that there was actually Bully rumored for Switch about 2019, 2021, sometime in that time period. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see that make the jump. I think Rockstar has an interesting case. I mean, they've definitely supported Switch, but this is kind of the time where, if we see GTA 5, I would be really happy about that. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they need to focus on bringing 6 over because that's the game that's going to get people excited. But I will say, if they deem that GTA 6 is just impossible, they can't port it, then you need to bring GTA 5 and online and everything to Switch too. Because at least then, people have that newer GTA experience.
Yeah, for sure. That would be something I would love to see. And, as we mentioned earlier, Red Dead Redemption 2 and that whole online thing. Though, of course, I don't think Red Dead Online is anywhere near as robust as Grand Theft Online. So, yeah, I think that's a big one. For me, a long shot that isn't really a long shot is Valve. They released Portal 1 and Portal 2 for the Nintendo Switch. And I would like to see specifically the Half-Life games come to the Nintendo Switch too. And, I would like to see perhaps maybe Left 4 Dead if they're feeling up to it. Whatever their new game Deadlock would be nice. And, I it would be great. I doubt it, but it would be really nice to see Team Fortress 2 also come to the Switch too. And I think, that's a big one for me, honestly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that that's something that they can really do. I mean, Valve bringing Portal was a huge deal. Still waiting on a physical for that, but I think that they can really bring the Half-Life series, and that would be really big and exciting for a lot of people. And I know that the Portal series sold well on Switch. I mean, it was a huge deal when it came over. So yeah, it'll be really interesting. But beyond that, I mean, I think that's probably about gonna do it for this episode of Switch Point. I mean, you have any last minute ideas of third party games you're really interested in? I mean, I feel like we've covered the whole spectrum from everything.
Yeah, I think the only one we maybe missed was like Marvel Rivals, but that just feels inevitable at this point.
Oh, there I'd be willing to bet you right now those developers at NetEase are scrambling to get that game on Switch too. I'd be willing to bet that will probably be a launch title. I mean, they know people are going to pay the money and, use the monetization there. Same with Fortnite. I mean, Fortnite's going to get a big update, I'm sure, and it'll actually look good.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely. And, that's going to do it for this episode of Switch Point. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching wherever you consume your podcast. But be sure to let us know in the comments what third party games you want to see Nintendo bring to Switch to. And we'll definitely have some thoughts on more third party stuff as we head closer to the Switch 2 Direct. But we'll catch you next time.